Welcome to the 12 Days of Edition Wars, a series in which we take a deep dive into the Dungeon Master's guides written for the previous editions of our favorite game. We aim to discuss what worked, what didn't work, what got pulled into future editions, and what got left by the side of the road. And on the 7th day of Edition Wars, my GM gave to me 7 swans swimming. And also the DMG II of 3rd edition, which I can't make fit with the 7 schema very easily. Seeing as it has a lot of chapters.
It does.
It has 7 chapters. That's nice. Give me 7 chapters swimming. Just pretend I said that originally.
Okay, yeah, that works for me. I am totally okay with that.
Thanks, audience.
Yeah. I'm sure they're on board.
So, I'm going to start by just talking about the back cover of this book, which promises to...
that's funny, because I was going to start talking about the front cover. So,
okay.
Yes, let's talk about the back cover.
So the back cover says, take your game to a new level, and all I can say to that is, no, that's a different book. You published that in 2002. It's the Epic Level Handbook. That's the one that takes your game to a new level. Let's not mess around. This book is 3 years later, published in June of 2005.
Yeah. So here's why I was going to mention the front cover, because the front cover... So recall, dear listener, that the 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons covers of the 3 core books were meant to look like tomes. And the initial, the 3 core books were, I think the player's handbook was brown, and it looked like it had like a leather cover with some jewels encrusted and whatnot. The 3.5 edition made it even more, fancy, but it was still didn't have an image on it. It was just meant to look like a book cover. And the monster manual had like scales or something, but it looked like it was a book made out of the scales, right? The leather scales of a creature or something. And then the DM's guide was like blue, and it had like a buckle on it or something. And then the 3.5 DM's guide had like a world in the center of it, but it was still a blue covered book, right? So no real images, just book. The DMG II has an Ifrit on it. And the reason that I'm calling that out is because it is a callback to the initial Dungeon Master's Guide, which has an enormous Ifrit on it. And I find that interesting because they didn't make the core books have any kind of image on the front. So It's kind of interesting that they did the homage here rather than on the core books. Yeah,
and the other like splat books and such, your Complete Warrior and Complete Arcane and the rest of that business, all sort of imitates this style of, hey, there's an image in the square instead of, a credible facsimile of a book. But this one is definitely that's a very specific look back.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. It still looks like a book cover. It has like hinges and whatever decorated corners and all that. But yeah, very interesting. I like that cover. So anyway.
So there's a lot to cover in this book, Sam. We're gonna have to exercise self-restraint.
Oh wait, are you serious? I don't see this happening anytime soon, buddy. I'm sorry to break it to you, but this is episode 7, but it's hour 12. Okay, so or something like that.
Sure.
It might be hour 13. I don't actually know. But
the 19th year of Christmas, folks. In 2020. Like, to 12 days could be 15 days. It could be 6 months. You don't know.
Thank goodness the 12 days of Christmas didn't come in March, because March was like 300 days long.
What this was, it's March, Sam.
Yeah, I know, but I still can't wrap my head around it. So I'm trying like hell to believe that it's actually December. It snowed yesterday.
It snows in March where you are.
I know. It's horrible. Anyway, so first chapter. So here, actually, I do want to mention the authors of this book, the designers. They're credited as designers. Jesse Decker, okay, heavily involved in the Dragon magazine. Okay, Dave Noonan, by this time already a well-heeled designer.
Yep.
Chris Thomason, also Dragon magazine person. James Jacobs. Okay. I mean, is there anything he didn't do in D&D? And Robin Laws.
Yeah. Robin Laws notably is going to get definitely called back in for the 4th edition DMG II.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't have it in front of me to see how much the rest of that Rogues Gallery will show up credited for the DMG2 4th edition.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember. The development team on this book is Bruce Cordell.
Yep.
One of my favorite designers, Andy Collins, and Steven Schubert. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is like a powerhouse team.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Definitely in this era of D&D, it's very, very powerhouse. My wonderful, wonderful wife has done me the favor of bringing me the 4th edition DMG2. And so Robin Laws is the only overlap in design. Then Andy Collins and Steven Schubert are the only additional design overlap. And then you've got Steven Schubert in development, Andy Collins in development, and Stephen Radley McFarland as the last credited developer.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, yeah, you're talking about a lot of D&D expertise on this book.
That is the truth. That is the truth. So what is this book, Sam?
This book is a toolkit of advice for a DM. It talks about the things you should think about when you run a game in Chapter 1. It talks about adventures, how to pace them, how to design them, how to integrate miniatures. It talks about, in Chapter 2, it talks about, in Chapter 3, the campaign. Again, how to design it, how to think about it, if you want to, the different considerations that you might have, like if you want to restrict to the race and class choices for your players. And then it talks about things like world building type things, like what does it mean to be in a medieval society, and what kind of establishments would be in a town there, in a typical town, and how do you build a typical town, and what kind of events will occur in that town. And then it actually, in Chapter 4, presents you with a worked example of a town. It's a town we've all know and love, Saltmarsh, which was in Adventure Module U1, The Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, which was made for first edition Dungeons & Dragons way back in probably 1980, 1981, something like that. And they statted it up for third edition, and they used their sort of world building guidelines, their city building guidelines, and they made that an entire chapter to give the DM a worked example, and including a map. And then there's a chapter on how to produce good NPCs. And then there is a chapter on some different character options. Nothing major there. That's kind of the one chapter that I didn't find all that interesting. Although it does talk about things like students and masters and training and things like that. And then there's a few prestige classes. There is a really nice piece on organizations. And then there's an entire chapter on magic items. Okay, we're done. I think this was the shortest episode. This book is great. Go buy it and read it.
Yeah,
all right.
Congratulations, our ratings. You have tanked.
Yes. But seriously, though, I mean, in other words, the things that I mentioned are all very sort of broad concepts that are used by DMs to prep their games, their campaigns, their adventures, their scenarios, their sessions. And all of that is in here. I mean, there's some real nitty gritty, really awesome tools in here. And then there's some, this is probably the least rules heavy book that we have talked about so far in this 12 Days of Edition Wars. Not that there aren't any rules in it, or not that there aren't stats in it or whatever, but it's more focused on the philosophy of DMing and how to use the things that you know and can learn to make a better game for you and your players.
Yeah, for sure. As you say, there are some mechanics here, and there's a lot of like very small tables that are modifiers to this or that, because that's how we do things in third ed.
Right.
it is a lot more similar to some of the blue covered spot books from Second Ed, creative campaigning and books like that
Right.
that I loved, and we talked about trying to cover in this series, but boy, did it not happen. I don't know who it was that thought we'd be able to cover books briefly, but that guy was an idiot.
So chapter 1, running a game.
So right, this is or is intended to be, and opinions vary. I mean, not that I hear anyone trash this book, but no one agrees. You never get anyone ever to agree on anything. This is that just ease people into the actual job of DMing and what it really means and feels like chapter that we've been talking about needing in every edition. Like, I don't know. It's a thing that Gygax is trying to do in his way that is so elliptical that it doesn't really achieve it.
Right.
And that I would argue that Zeb Cook hits a little better, but only a little, because he too is sort of stuck in knowing how to do it, but not necessarily remembering what the questions of a starting GM are.
I'll grant you that one. That's probably a pretty reasonable evaluation of that.
So,
but what do you think about this chapter, though? You think this accomplishes enough?
So I think that even just the first couple of pages are a really good, bit of essay writing on describing the goals and sort of sub goals of GMing. Keeping fun as your core priority. Yes, okay, important. Secondary priorities. Everything else is secondary. It is the good note there. And describing maintaining authority as sort of, at least visually, the lowest ranked of the secondary priorities. That's appropriate.
Right.
And then there's the great chin up sidebar that is the pep talk that every starting DM needs, and quite a few more experienced GMs find that they need just because reasons. You're having a bad day, or maybe last session didn't go off the way you had so fervently hoped.
Well, that's my thing, right? That I always say, that not every session can be the best, most awesome session ever, because if that was the case, you're quickly going to hit a ceiling, and it's impossible to make every session the best, most awesome session you've ever had, unless you start at such a low bar that those sessions that you're calling the best ever yet really actually suck, right?
Well, I just assume that people will slowly forget how great the previous session was, and so it'll be a little bit easier to top that this time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, everybody's going to have a not perfect session, and that's just how it goes. And even I had, well, I think, I was talking to you a couple months ago about this when we were recording one of these episodes. Not one of these, but one of our other ones. And saying, man, I had, my game, it wasn't a great game. Like, it was fine. It was okay. Just didn't go off the way I wanted, and it didn't have the effect that I wanted, and there was something missing with it, and I had to analyze that, and I needed that chin up talk.
Yeah.
So that's how it goes. And then it moves on to play styles.
Right.
It doesn't have a huge write up about play styles.
Well, I mean, once you get into player traits and incentives, I mean, this is very much recapitulating Robin's laws of good game mastering, and so I will very casually assume that Robin wrote a lot of this.
Oh, sure. That's funny. There were certain parts of this book when I was like, oh yeah, that's Robin Laws.
Yeah.
That's not a derogatory comment, by the way.
No. There's some very good sidebars on just, this is a problem character that a lot of people seem to like to play. Maybe don't.
Yeah. So there is one thing that I do appreciate about this area here, this post-game analysis.
Yeah.
And not because it's written so well and it blew my mind because I never thought about it before, but this is the type of thing where this is exactly what a new DM needs to start to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, experienced DMs can do it too, but if you don't know that this is something that you can do and that you can use to help you, then this could be a revelation, right? But basically, it's just the idea of at the end of the session, after everybody has gone, and when you're at home by yourself now, sit down and literally make a little list of the highlights of the session and who the key players were and what was the payoff.
Yeah.
And you don't have to write, it's not extensive, write a giant session report or, explain everything in great detail and spend 12 hours writing a dissertation on it. It's more about making you focus your ideas about what happened. And that's going to be able to lead you to, what kinds of, if you do this 3 or 4 sessions in a row, you're going to see, okay, well, what things were the biggest highlights of each session? And if you see recurring themes, now you can start molding your sessions towards those areas that the players enjoy the most.
Yeah.
And so that's a great tool, and it's spelled out with an example. And I really like that when they give an example, because sometimes, anybody can write a couple of paragraphs suggesting something, but then if you don't give an example in a book like this, then, what are you writing in this book for? So
For sure. Yeah. Like a lot of gaming writing has, I think, trended away from, the for example, comma, paragraph or page,
right.
whatever.
Yeah.
This is not the book for that.
Right, right. And then just to finish this out, it also has you do a weak point chart, right? So it's not just what are the best things that happened, but also what could you maybe improve on next time, right?
Yeah.
And not that it's always the DM's fault, but just as it really does fall on the DM's shoulders to try to help steer the whole group. And even if the issue is not really the DM's issue, being able to recognize that there was a problem will help you maybe cut it off at the pass a little sooner next time.
Yeah.
So,
one of the things that I see here is that this is suggesting that the GM, just in their own mind, come up with what the player's feedback would be were they to write it. It doesn't say ask your players for feedback. It says observe your players and think about what you think they think about something,
right.
Based on their visible level of engagement. And that, it's good to pour as much thought into that as you can. It's better to ask.
I agree to a point. Well, so I agree with that basic statement. It is better to ask. And I wish that they had said in here, you should ask for feedback and specific feedback, right? There's a way to ask. You don't just say, hey, did everybody have fun, right? Because in general, nobody's going to tell you, no, I didn't really have fun. If they had a little bit of fun at one time in the session, they're going to tell you, yeah, I had fun.
Right.
So you got to ask more specific, maybe more pointed questions. But the reason I like this, despite the fact that it doesn't say ask the players, is a new DM doesn't know how to ask those pointed questions, maybe. Doesn't know how to ask it without offending someone or putting somebody on the spot or trying or in a way that makes it seem like they're just trying to get accolades, right?
Sure. And no feedback tool is going to be right for every group. I'm just sort of thinking about the fact that I have players who observing them is not going to tell me what they thought about something.
Sure.
Their poker face is better than my insight check.
Right. Right.
And this is a lot of my players, actually. Some of them I can tell what they thought, and I can draw energy from that as I work as a GM, and some of them I can't. And so this tool does not work for me in my own experience of gaming. And so that's why it's jumping out.
Not now, though, right? Not now, but I guess for me, I'm looking at it as a tool for a new DM that maybe the new DM has not thought about.
No, that's fine. It's just I'm just seeing like this is a tool that works for some groups and not others, specifically because some players don't register their feedback like especially clearly with body language and visible engagement, right?
Yeah. Well, and once again, I wish that it went one step further and said, "Hey, at the beginning of next session, why don't you discuss this with your players?"
Yep.
Right? Or during the food break, if you take a break in the middle of the session next time, because you don't want to start off the session talking about it, maybe you want to get the game going, but maybe in the middle of the session you bring this up when everybody's just eating and you're not actually playing.
Yeah.
Right, or whatever. Like they could give some little advice like that would make it so that now the DM starts to integrate the players in this feedback cycle, right?
Yeah.
But that's why I say this area needs a little more.
Yeah.
A little more advice.
Yeah, I agree with that. So moving forward a bit, I really do like some of the takes on things like establishing ground rules and house rules, and what sort of the modes of play are going to be, whether there's high secrecy between players or no secrecy between players, or what have you.
Right.
Those can both be really effective. Both kind of the dramatic irony mode where there's no secrecy between players, and they help you get up to kind of shenanigans that their characters don't know about or whatever.
Right.
And the version where there's maybe some actual tension that you try to draw some lines around between, well, these players could betray one another in game. Well, that can work and be really fun. Right. You need to manage the bleed. There's probably going to be some bleed, and you need to manage it. If you don't know what bleed is, it's that feeling when you take an emotion across the in-play, out-of-play line in either direction, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. We in my Rime of the Frost Maiden game, we had a pretty intense scene at the end of the third session where there was a lot of player tension and antagonism is probably too strong a word, but it was totally in character, and it was like these players are in character fighting with each other. And so at the end of the session, me and one of the other players were kind of like, okay, just to check in, is everybody okay? Like, is everybody, like there's no residual issue here, right? That was completely in character. Yeah. And I knew what the answer was, but I still had to check in.
Oh, right? For sure.
Because I've known these players for a while, and I know that they can do that in character, and they really are just playing their character. And they know each other well enough that they trust each other to do that sort of thing. So it's not an issue, but there's still a check-in.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good.
So in any case, this isn't about let's talk about Sam's game chapter. What else about chapter 1 here?
The top 10 ways to ruin your game sidebar is always a good time.
Yeah.
I mean,
I did read that when I was flipping through earlier.
Until you get to the second sentence, I feel a little called out by number 1 on that list, which is a bad place to be. But DM in a style geared exclusively to your own personal tastes, as if you were running a one-on-one game for yourself. Okay, I don't come here to be attacked like this. Oh. So it says, create an intellectual ideology explaining why your way is the only way to play. Well, I can probably let myself off the hook for that one. Sorta? You know what? My players listen to this. They'll tell me if I'm wrong. It's fine. Scream its finer points at your players as they head out the door to find the new DM. Screw you, book. You don't know my life.
Yeah. And then here's number 3 is actually really pertinent to what I was just talking about the beginning of the chapter, and that is, in a naked bid for attention, demand that the players participate in detailed after-session dissections of your gaming style, even though they seem relatively happy with the game as is. Right? Like, don't do that. What's wrong with
don't
you?
do that, but you do need a way to have clear channels of communication.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is that these 10 ways to ruin your game are meant to be sort of exaggerated, bombastic versions of stuff that you should be doing a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, some of the sidebars in this chapter are quite entertaining. There's one on laptops, which,
Wow. Wow. This book is extremely 15 years old right now.
Yes, it is. In the category of things that do not age well.
I mean, at this point, about half my players have a laptop at the table, and that's just their character sheet.
Yeah.
It's a laptop or a tablet, right?
Yep.
And that's just totally normal. No problem.
Right.
Why are we talking about it?
Well, it's just, and we can forgive them this because, how could the designers of a role-playing game be able to predict the future and know that, 15 years later, there's going to be a situation where it's just accepted that everybody has a device in their frickin' pocket.
Okay. In all fairness, some of the writers of this book are literally science fiction authors.
Yes, but you don't write the book you don't write a book like this based on an assumption that could happen, right? Of something that could happen 15 years down the road.
Design has to be future proofed. Why can't design commentary be future proofed? You don't think so?
If I could get in my time machine, I would go back and warn them, but I cannot.
Yeah, that's your first stop with the time machine. Fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair
right.
Lord.
It has this nice sidebar about sample descriptions of moves and sample quips and battle cries, which I find entertaining, these things.
Yeah, certainly the quips and battle cries is really hitting me hard as someone who used to work in video game design as a writer, because as a writer in video game design, the main thing you write is barks.
Right.
This is, Like, don't get me wrong; these are fine. They're good. Whatever. Though poltroon is not to be used in most circumstances.
Yes, I know. Well, I found these hilarious. Like, you've thwarted me for the last time, do-gooders. And then one of them is die, and then the next one is die. I told you, die. I mean, it's just hilarious. But yes, I get your queasiness because of computer games.
It's trauma. It's trauma, Sam.
Yeah, it's trauma. Sorry.
Well, there's a lot of discussion about communicating in a lot of different contexts, right? Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of different ways for people to communicate, and that's great. I think that for me, when I first got this book, I really struggled to see the text on the page and turn it into practice. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how many more people read it that way.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is that so much of this is experiential, right? Reading it doesn't do much. Like, for example, I'm looking at a sentence on page 32. It says, you should intervene immediately when you hear a player make an argument based on information the character would know to be incorrect. Right?
Yeah.
Regardless of whether that's true or not, a single sentence on the 32nd page of a dense text is not going to be remembered necessarily, right? Like, it's hit and miss which of these will stick in the person's mind.
Right. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, so the key here for a book like this is that it's organized in a way that information is easy to find very soon after the DM has this experience at the table so that they can figure out, well, what's the advice the experts are giving me on how to deal with this?
Yep.
And I don't know that this book does that very well. I'm not saying it does it poorly, but I don't know if it does it well.
Oh, so this gets to what I've been talking about throughout all of the 12 days to date, which is sort of that essayist style, right? How approachable is the text as opposed to being kind of dry? How is it carrying forward the idea and inviting you in? And this is the thing that I think, because it was my text that I loved so much, this is what I think Zeb Cook does so well, right? And, it isn't this is bad, it is that it's a lot. And so I think that maybe there could have been some benefit here to doing like discrete essays on topics rather than
specific topics, shorter specific topics,
right? With kind of maybe it's sort of a 5-paragraph jobby. I just feel like maybe they could carry you through the ideas a little more sharply in places. I don't know.
I mean, maybe. So let me give you, as a sort of alternate way to think about this, the very next section on this same page 32 is what you do away from the table. And it's talking about how to prioritize things to prepare and how long you're spending preparing for a game. And so, if you have an hour to prepare, here's what you do. And it's a bullet pointed list with paragraphs, right? But it's bullet pointed.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's absolutely great.
Right. And so that's kind of my point is this feels more like an example that says, hey, if you're wondering how you could possibly get this thing prepared in time, well, if you have this long, here's what you should do. If you have this long, here's what you should do. If you have this long, here's how you prioritize, right? Based on how much time you have. And it's like a specific example of, look, you should review this, you should select this, you should read this part. And it's a step-by-step instruction manual for what to do to prioritize that. Whereas the very previous little subsection here is, as you're talking about, it's very, free form. Hey, let's just talk about this subject and kind of dump this information on you in a very almost conversational way, except it's not a conversation. It's a person reading it who, it's that fine balance between, is this an instructional textbook or is this my best friend who's also a great DM giving me advice, right? Like, It's hard to determine those.
Yep, I agree with that.
Which is almost why, and so not to harp on this, but it's almost why the sidebars draw your eyes, right? Because it's a small chunk of very specific information.
Yep.
And it accentuates or adds to the text in the regular portion of the chapter, but because it's offset and set aside by design, it's meant to draw your eye so that you read it. But one of the things that is so good about it is most of them are short, relatively speaking, right?
Yep.
And little chunks of information are much more easily digested than 3-page articles, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So anything else you want to say about chapter 1?
Well, so ultimately, I think that the chapter is solid, and it's covering a lot of stuff that new DMs need and refresher courses that more experienced DMs need. But something about the presentation makes it just feel a bit grindy to get through. I don't know if that's on the writer or the typesetter maybe, or what, but I know I didn't read this in detail when I got the book or when I was checking the book out at my friendly local game store or whatever.
I mean, I find that I tend to agree with your assessment. The sections of this chapter that have specific advice are much better. For example, the thing about prep that I talked about a minute ago,
Yep,
and
that's
the
very
next
strong.
section follows it is improvisational aids, and it talks about, hey, look, make a list of names that are appropriate to your setting that you can have on hand for NPCs. Like, that's one of the best pieces of advice to give a new DM who hasn't even thought about that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Have a lot of experience improvising, and it's in bold, and there's only 2 sentences to describe what they're talking about, and then it moves on to the next bolded term. So, it's one of those where, okay, these are actionable things, right? These are actionable things I can do to make this useful.
Also, I really appreciate the stats for spontaneous urban opponents,
Mm-hmm.
like paragraph. I think that
Right.
is incredibly good.
Mm-hmm.
It's who is it? I always forget if it's Chandler or Hammett that says if you don't know what to do, have someone run in the room with guns blazing.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And like that's absolutely great.
Mm-hmm.
The PCs did something, and now they get beat up for it, or they beat someone up.
Right.
It's yes, like you're gonna need
Right.
that with no advance warning because it's
Mm-hmm.
just setting responsiveness.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Um,
Right.
and one of the things that that I think DMs need to be taught, and this chapter doesn't fully get to, is that experience of responsiveness.
Right.
But maybe we're going to see it in chapter 2 because that's adventures.
Right. Yeah, we might. We might. So let's move on to chapter 2 then.
Yes, let's.
Adventure pacing.
Yep. um, uh, so the 3 act structure that it is recommending is it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I play a lot of adventures that can be comfortably broken into 3 acts in any meaningful sense because emergent play doesn't really adhere to an act structure.
Which is my exact thought anytime I ever read this advice. And I understand the advice. I understand logically why it's maybe a good skill to be able to place a campaign arc or something into a 3 act structure, or each session into a 3 act structure.
Yeah.
And I know it's very popular, and I know why it works in movies and plays, and I know also why it doesn't work with
Yeah.
my DMing style.
Well, and I still prefer a 5 act structure analysis, but that's me.
Sure, but I just mean in terms of, like, I understand for beginners, it's a great way to introduce the idea of you should have an idea of what plot element is going to get pressed on or come into play this session.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be a way to introduce that. That's your beginning. In a way where the characters find out about it or how it relates. That's your middle. And then there's got to be something that happens as an end cap to that session so that it doesn't just sort of peter out and not do anything. That's the same thing as a 3 act structure. It's just a different way of stating it. And I understand the need for that, but I am such a heavy improv GM. I mean,
Same.
my players do things and ask things, and I'm just like, okay, well, let me answer that question. There's no possible way for me to plan that really in a 3 act way. I can't. I just don't run the game that way. And that's not a dig on that. I think it's actually really good advice if you don't understand how to sit down to try to wrap your head around planning something for the first time, right? This is a structure that helps a person get the pacing down in their head. But just like the advice about writing out the high points and the weaknesses of a particular session, that doesn't work for every person, neither does this.
Yeah.
And I feel like this section, while it's well written, it just doesn't have enough meat in it to, once again, it's a sort of a stream of consciousness. Let me put this information on the paper, and not a here's how you do this.
Right. I mean, I think that getting to a point of universal advice is no more possible here than it is in any other art form.
Sure.
I've read plenty about writing and plenty that does not help me specifically with the things that are wrong with my writing, such as my ability to focus.
Anyway, moving along.
Yeah. So I love that there's a big section on using published adventures
Mhm.
and changing them and fixing things that don't work for your group and that kind of thing.
Yep. And it even has a list of like, simple fixes and, here's how to do that.
Yeah, I think that's very good.
Then there's a section on traps, which suddenly we're stuck in the let's talk about the CR4 dust cloud trap and what the concentration check is and what the fortitude DC
Right.
is.
That's
and,
that's a really hard turn.
Yeah.
That's a
it
real
is.
hard turn.
Yeah, it kind of almost feels like it comes out of nowhere, to be honest.
I mean, it absolutely does come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I love having new traps. This is good, useful content. It doesn't belong in this chapter because it doesn't follow on the idea that preceded it, but
Right.
it is good, useful content. And I mean, just like what happened here is layout was like, where do I put this?
Right.
And they were like, well,
There's a section on adventuring. Yes, let's put it there.
I mean, best effort, man. What can you do?
Okay.
Like I definitely have this like video clip in my head of the book's editors staring at it and being like, okay, we can't cut any of this because it's all what we ordered
Right.
from the writers,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
something else changed, and so now it doesn't flow.
Right.
Too dang bad. Peace.
Yeah. I mean, they could have made a subheading.
Yeah.
And put it in a subheading along with the next section, which is archetypal locations.
Right, and that's all to the good.
Yeah, because again, it's not as stat heavy, but it really is about, oh, here's a type of location you might put in your adventure. Here's how to think about it, right?
Yeah,
here's how to put it in there.
And I mean, this is actually great. Like, here's how to make a common location more exciting. Is just that's wildly applicable.
Right. Sure.
Like, yeah, you absolutely need that. And
Right.
I love that Tasha's is starting to really scratch the surface of that.
And I don't disagree with that. But what I'm saying is, if they had switched these, if they had put traps after this, right, or after the special encounter section, right, they could have said, building on the ideas that we just presented in the archetypal locations and in the, specific encounters or encounter examples, you can also spice up, an encounter or a situation or an environment by adding traps. And so here's some new traps, right? Instead of just kind of plopping that 6-page trap section in the middle of the chapter with no warning.
Yeah.
So I think that's a formatting issue, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's very fair. But as we said, the section on archetypal locations is it has a lot of like bits and bobs, and I think I would be a little bit happier if some of that could be like stripped down to the most exciting parts, and we'll just run with that and not worry about like risks and cinematic moments that are more corner case. But it's great. Having said all that, it's still great.
Yeah, I mean, I get what they're going for in that section.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah, like they cover really good ground. It's not exhaustive. Nothing could ever be exhaustive, but it's good ground.
Sure. Well, because it's packaged in a format that makes it very usable, and it's easy to understand what they're going for.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of only really read the section that you are staring at.
Right. Which is why I say if they had introduced the trap section a little bit differently, then you could understand how to apply that new stat block, that new information to the overall story you're trying to tell, or the overall thing that you're building, the encounter that you're building, or the situation, or the terrain, or whatever, right? Like it seems like they could have presented that a little bit better.
Yeah. And I mean, seeing this kind of content in the DMG II that has so much in common with the additional trap section of Xanathar's and
Mm-hmm.
the environmental hazards section of Tasha's.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in case you missed it, folks, those are the DMG expansions you're getting
Right.
for
Yeah. Right.
for 5th.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. In other words, there will be no DMG 2 for 5th edition.
Right, and there is a part of me that's always going to think that's a shame because they're in such a habit of making their DMG 2s
So good.
so good.
Yeah.
Like, in case we have undersold it, this is a really good book.
Yeah. I feel like I'm being very. Sound like probably I'm being very hard on it, but that's because I like it so much.
Yeah,
Right.
like this is great
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the majority, the traps are the thing that annoys me the most. But even the traps that are in there are kind of interesting and pretty good.
well, right,
And
and
I just
the only
whatever.
problem is that it doesn't flow in the chapter. As
Right.
problems go, that's
Right.
real low
Sure.
impact.
Sure. Yeah. No, for sure.
And so you have special encounters, things like the chase and
Mm-hmm.
crowds and
Yeah,
mobs.
mobs. Yeah, which is good, right? Because this is the kind of thing where this is not necessarily. I don't want to say it's not common, right? But it's a common trope to have a pitchfork and torches mob chasing somebody, right? Or
Right.
a mob of zombies chasing somebody, or whatever. Like there's all kinds of tropes that include a veritable mob, right?
Yep.
But yet often in the general rules of D&D, it doesn't actually tell you very much about how to deal with that or give you very many tools or options on how to deal with that. So this is kind of a nice little section,
Yeah, absolutely. And the chase rules here. I'm gonna say that they make me feel really good about the chase rules of 5e.
Yeah.
That randomized table of chase events looks really good. Compared to this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, these chase rules are some of these are pretty some dense paragraphs of info here. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah, and just like percentage chances of terrain containing debris that.
Right. I was just looking at the debris section. If you wish, you could provide a chased character with larger piles of debris to spill. For each additional 10-foot square section, the character tries to turn into difficult terrain. The DC of the strength check increases by 5. The character does not need to try to trip over the entire pile of debris. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that's
right.
not the best.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, and then crowds and mobs. And then it gets to miniatures and encounter building.
Yep. Which, it's about using, about whether you use a map and a grid and miniatures and the whole deal. But the discussion of the D&D miniatures war game is especially what? Like, I have no idea how this fits into this book.
Yeah.
It is just the most unrelated thing. I've never read that whole section at speed, and I have no idea why it's here. That's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Well, so in the spirit of giving some odd little section of optional rules, I think that's, whatever.
But there's specifically a hardback book for that.
Yes, there is.
It's
I know,
the Miniatures Handbook.
Yes, I know, but I'm just saying, like, so basically, what they're doing is giving a nod to, hey, look, these rules exist, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. I can't really explain it myself, but
Anyway, the battle grid terrain section is much more okay. It's talking about. It's really very good practical advice for map notation on a Chessex mat or on your dry erase tactiles, which are great and hard to find these days. So then you get more encounter tables for all kinds of more exotic areas. That's good to have.
Yeah, sure. That's fair.
It's drilling way down to a level of detail that is a little sure. Oh, okay.
Well, see, but this is why I say this is a toolbox,
And that's
right?
super fair.
Because I feel like, the first half of chapter 2 is way different from the second half of chapter 2. I feel like that could have been split. They could have put the first half of chapter 2 in chapter 1, and they could have made chapter 2 your adventure encounter toolbox, right?
Yeah.
And that would solve the problem of exactly what you're talking about, because you wouldn't look at it and say, well, why the hell is this in here? Right? You would
Yep.
just say, oh, okay, so I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a toolbox. You still might think it shouldn't be there, or maybe it should be in an appendix or something, but
Sure.
at least it's in a well-labeled area that you can just breeze through.
That's super fair.
And then we get to chapter 3.
Chapter 3.
Campaigns. The campaign. Not just campaigns. The campaign. Recruiting new players. One of the most talked about problems that people have. Maybe not now in 5th edition,
Yeah.
but
How there's not a section on recruiting new DMs, I couldn't tell you.
right. Yeah, I know it. Yeah. So finding players, structuring your, it provides various different campaign types, right? Do you run it episodic? Do you have heavy continuity? Those are the only 2 options here. Looks like.
Yeah.
They could have done that better, I think.
Well,
I mean, so then it goes into the campaign concept section.
I definitely would have liked to have seen a more, like some nod to troop style play.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, so you've got episodic. You could have troop style. You could have a finite term campaign, right?
Yep.
One type of arc, levels 1 through 6.
Yep.
Right. Or, just presenting or only presenting specifically episodic campaigns, or continuity. So continuity campaign is where it's basically your traditional campaign where the story follows on from the last session and keeps going, and then it has a natural end. But it doesn't really talk about, do you set a specific time for the end? Things like that. So, it feels like this section is it's fine, but, love the art of the Minotaur.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And then campaign concepts.
Wait. The biggest network for organized D&D play is the RPGA.
Well, remember, this is definitely 15 years old.
Woof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So right.
Listen to this. The internet is a goldmine for an isolated DM in need of new players. Using the search engine of your choice, you can quickly find any number of D&D and general role-playing sites, many of which maintain dedicated player recruitment pages or forums where you can post recruitment ads.
The hell you say? So you're telling me I can go on Alta Vista and find someone's GeoCities site?
If that is the search engine of your choice.
Awesome. or you think I should Bing it? Can I Bing it?
I'm going to go on Ask Jeeves and ask Jeeves, how do I find
awesome
D&D?
Very good.
Anyway, time warp back to 2020. Go through some pages with some dancing hamsters, and then we get to
torch animation.
Yeah. Oh, hey, look. Then there's the panda mushroom. So we can just Okay. So a little campaign section about the concept, how you're going to close it. Do you want to make race and class designations? Do you have requirements for those? Are you going to restrict the choices that your players can make? This is a decent section. It's basically just saying, look, when you're planning a campaign, here's some things you need to think about. Nothing in there specifically calls out to me to say this is the most wonderful advice I've ever read, and nothing calls out to me and says, wow, that's a really missed the mark. So,
yeah. I mean, I don't know. For guys like you and me, this is mostly stuff we've known for so long we can't remember not knowing it.
Right. Well, so here's the thing, right? So, and I was going to wait to ask this at the end, but it feels to me like all this stuff could have been in the first DMG.
Yeah, page count notwithstanding.
Right. But no. But so you switch some things out, right? Because look, if I'm a new DM and I got to wait for 4 years to get this book that tells me the stuff that a newbie DM needs,
You're gonna come after Enrique on air like this? Rough, dude. Rough.
Well, last time I talked to him, he told me I was old, so I have to get him back.
That's fair. That's fair.
Disclaimer: no Enriques were hurt during the filming of this. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I feel like this information is great if I'm just trying to learn how to do it. But it's in the DMG II.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of what, like, the goal of these chapters, I 100% agree is what the third ed DMG needed to be achieving.
Right.
No question in my mind. Some of the advice is maybe something you could save till a second book because, okay, you don't need to answer these questions until you do have a couple of sessions under your belt. Fine. But yeah, the explanatory and in some cases persuasive goals here absolutely are DMG1 content. The book that is creating DMs. Yes, no argument.
Right.
Like marketing your DMG1 to existing DMs and marketing your DMG2s and later to new GMs is patently insane.
Right.
They won't find out about that book, and nothing about the title will help them.
Mm-hmm. Right. So now we're into a marketing thing, though, right? Because I think the idea is we're going to make this book and they're going to buy it.
Yep.
Anybody who plays third edition is going to buy all the books we release. Full stop. We don't need to think any more about it.
But that's so wrong.
No, I know. But I'm just saying, like, this is, yes, I'm not saying that's true. I'm not advocating for it. I'm saying that felt like
you're absolutely
the strategy, right? So, anyway, so we can move on from this. But I just, the thing is that, once again, I feel like I'm lambasting this book, but the book is really good.
It is good.
Except that it's the DMG II. Like, so much of this should be in the DMG 1. Right. Yep. Or in some book that says, hey, you want to be a dungeon master? Start with this book.
Yep.
Right. You've been playing for a year now and you want to, stick your toe into the pool of dungeon mastering. Read this book here.
Well, and like, I understand that there are real pressures that require DMGs to not have another signature or two of pages in them. But man, that is honestly selling the whole hobby short to not at least go one signature higher. And, maybe you do have an audience base where a lot of them can skip that chapter of 32 pages on how to do this thing for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
But you are laying such good groundwork for the survival of your company and hobby.
Right. And here's the thing, right? This is something that is I feel a little bit differently about it in 5th edition. Not a great deal differently, but a little bit. And only because in 5th edition, there are so many other ways that a person can get this information, right? There's a bazillion blogs. I will now market for the newbie DM who writes a blog about how to be a new DM and do things. I will stump for 100 other websites. One by Branda Stoddard is pretty good, I hear.
Thank you.
And you know what I'm saying? And so that's places to get this kind of information with tips and tricks and here's how you do things, right? And also actual play. You can actually see these things, right? And there are a ton of YouTube videos on how to be a great GM. And there's a ton of streamers that stream how, their tips. Mike Shea, Sly Flourish, he does a prep session once a week or once every 2 weeks or something, where he literally just goes through and talks through his own prep for his game. So if you're new or you don't understand how to do it, or you're not sure if you like his style, that's the perfect place to go to learn that, right?
Yep.
And he sold a book about, what is it, Lazy Dungeon Master's Guide or something, right? Lazy DMs. What is it? Sly Flourishes. Oh, Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. It's on my shelf. So, right, where it's all about how to prep your game if you're new or if you don't really know exactly what to do. So for 5th edition, it's a little bit different because there's so many other types of media out there that are readily accessible. But this was written in 2005, and there weren't so many highly accessible ways to get this information if you wanted to be a dungeon master and you had never done it before.
Yeah, I'm still kicking myself for not starting my blog back then.
Yeah.
Could have been a contender, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Think of all the spare time I had.
Yeah, I know, but you didn't know, right? You never know how much time you have until you don't have it anymore.
That is accurate. You never know how much time you don't have until you have kids.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like, how the hell did I survive before with all that free time? What did I accomplish? Moving along. House rules or expanded rules. Again.
Yeah, this is very Session Zero stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And, Session Zero hasn't really been invented as a term yet, but this chapter's about it.
Right.
It's about that, just communicating the foundations kind of stuff. Decide a thing, sell it to the players, go.
Mm-hmm. This is also before the great swath or great wave of, not sure which one of those is better to use as a phrasing, but it's before the huge tidal wave of, hey, let's be more collaborative. Because when you read this book is written to the DM.
Oh yeah.
And, for example, the part on connecting characters to the character concept says, if you're using a party concept, quiz the players to find out how their PCs fit into it. Let's say you're running a game in which the PCs are reformed criminals who now serve as a major city's constabulary. You'd ask each player why the PC became a criminal and how the NPC police captain inspired him to reform. Like, that's not bad advice. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, except it forgets the part in the beginning where you didn't just decide, hey, you made your PCs, but guess what? You're all reformed criminals.
Well, sure. That's
right.
absolutely, express your foundational idea.
Mm-hmm.
Then they make characters.
Right. And that's in here somewhere, but it's written very, very much to the DM as a separate entity from the players. And I think with a lot of the push for more collaborative types of play since 3rd edition, there's more of an idea of, hey, this is our game and we're all having fun with it. And we all need to agree that we're going to have fun, and we can agree on the constraints of the actual game that we're playing. What kind of game are we going to play? What type of themes is it going to have? And are the PC's backgrounds going to all be connected this way? And that can be a conversation more so than a DM dictating that information. I'm not saying that doesn't still occur, because I'm sure it does. And I'm not saying it's wrong, because if that's how the DM wants to do it, fine. If they can get players, great. But I think the language has evolved in a way that if this book was written now, it would be written from player to player, right?
That's fair.
As we're all players of the game, and not, here's the DM's information, here's how you interrogate your players to find out why this works.
So thumbscrews yes or thumbscrews no?
Well, so it depends.
Right. Thumbscrews with consent. I get it now.
Yes. See.
Thumbscrews are a great way of obtaining consent. Nope, not right. That's not it.
Well, as long as you have a safe word, who am I to say?
Wow.
This has been this has been the 3rd edition DMG II. Okay, so then we go to medieval society. So, all right, here's another case where this section kind of comes out of the blue.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, it does have the sort of nice benefit of taking me back to ADMG, just because it is trying to acknowledge, real world history so that you can adapt it to your setting if that's appropriate for you.
And I appreciate what they've done, and they even have a little, equality in history sidebar.
Yeah.
It talks about, how modern sensibilities are more egalitarian and have theoretically fewer imposed rules about the behavior of men and women, and that if you run your D&D setting that way, that has certain consequences, good or bad, depending on your point of view, I suppose.
Yep.
Well, maybe not. I don't know. And that you need to think about that. For example, I'll give you an example that it states. It says, a world with full legal and social equality between the sexes would differ significantly from the Middle Ages. The eldest royal heir would ascend to the throne regardless of gender, so it's not just the male heir. And then it gives us, heroes performing great feats would not be rewarded with marriages to fair maidens because, hello, the fair maiden has a choice, right? And so if you plan this entire world and you plan it to be more equal, but then you still have it set up as having all of these sort of tropes, these medieval tropes that we use, it's gonna feel like something doesn't match, right?
Sure.
And I like this sidebar right up until the last paragraph when it says this. It says, most players want you to strike a balance between freedom from sexism and historical flavor. Okay, that's fine. Play it by ear. Fudge is necessary. Don't look too hard at the contradictions. Okay, fine. That's fine. When a realistic portrayal of a historical sexism would annoy or depress your players, tone down the history. Perfect. Great advice. When the details of an equal opportunity world seem too modern or out of step with the medieval atmosphere, revert to history. Okay, that's fine. Then it says, here's where my problem comes in. In general, players dislike having sexist rules applied to themselves. That I agree with, but don't mind so much when those rules involve NPCs. I disagree with that statement.
Okay.
Because if you have a bunch of women at your table role-playing and every other woman in your setting is being, treated like a serf with no rights and no power, they could get uncomfortable with that. Don't assume that it's okay that you're doing it to an NPC just because you're not doing it to a PC.
Yeah, for sure.
That's my only problem with that. That's my problem with that. Otherwise, I get their intent. It's a great little sidebar, but I read that and that sentence it pinged my brain, and it was like, no. That's great advice maybe in 1995 or 1985. It's not great advice in now today, and it might not have been great advice in 2005.
Yeah, I mean, I played in a Pendragon campaign for years, where the questions of sexism for female knights was a major campaign issue, and half the players in the game were women, right? And so they were several of them were playing male knights, and then one was playing a female knight who passed as male in order to deal with that. And so it was a huge campaign question, and the game didn't lean really heavily on sexism in the society of the Britons in general, because that wasn't the fun we were looking to have. But there was a lot of tension around an order of female knights that was operating in secret, kind of thing. And very fortunately, none of these women friends of mine, burned me to the ground for my character's stance on that, which was just my character being himself and they understood where he was coming from. And I wasn't just being a horrible jerk, which is the usual, it's just my character meaning.
Right. I know. I get what you're saying. Right.
Also, I have very forgiving friends, and I want to thank them for that, in case they're listening.
Well, I mean, there is a case to be made for exploring those types of ideas, as long as everybody at the table is in agreement and feels safe with each other. Like, I don't think that's bad, right? I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is to put as advice into this book that it's okay to be a little sexist to the NPCs as long as you don't do it to the PCs. That's not great advice.
Yeah.
So, Now, they do then call out, they say, provided any discrimination is presented as a normal element of a stable society and it's not brutal or demeaning. Well, you know what? Treating all the women like serfs just because they don't have a penis, that is demeaning.
Sure.
On its face.
Sure.
So, I get what they're doing. They're straddling a line, but that one particular very last sentence in this sidebar is not the greatest advice. But, it's still well done, right?
Yeah, man.
This whole section is still well done. So once again, I'm nitpicking because everything else is so good, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could, if you're thinking of it as a specific case of the general statement, you can do lots of bad things to NPCs that your PCs will not blink too hard at.
Absolutely,
because it's not happening to them. That is accurate.
Right.
This is a special case where I agree with you, though. I think that players are going to still identify with NPCs who share major traits with them,
right?
Especially with their real selves.
Right. So anyway, so then it goes on to talk about the place of monarchs and lords and knights and footmen, and remember, this is like 4 or 5 pages on how you have how you format a medieval setting, basically. And it's fine. It's good. This is the kind of stuff that if this was my first DMG, I would have eaten this section up. Because this to me is the same as, reading the first edition DMG and reading about sages and what their areas of expertise are, and reading about, the feudal society. And, even though some of that is really horrible, but, I love that stuff. I loved that stuff.
If I had been 12 in 2005 when I was getting, all of my D&D books, instead of 24, I would have been so all about this, because getting me to devour pages of medieval history, both sort of big important battles and kingdom shifts history, and also social history, is as easy now as it was then.
Right.
This would have been my favorite thing. No question. Right. I would have read this, and I'd still be able to quote it chapter and verse.
Right. Yeah. Me too. I'm right there with you. That's exactly how I would feel about this section. It's well done. It has a lot of information. It piques my interest. It's really good.
What's funny about it is how much it reminds me of some of the books I went through for my Tribality series on domain management. One of the big dividing factors in domain management rules is how they handle fidelity to history.
Right.
And some of them go really uncomfortably deep on fidelity to history. I'll put it there.
Yeah.
How many different classes of peasants and serfs do I need to understand just to get through these rules?
Yeah.
4? Cool. Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's rough. That's really rough.
Anyway.
And then it moves on to towns and cities.
Yep.
And the first thing it does is give you 50 rumors and hooks that you could use.
Yeah. I love a good rumor table.
Yeah.
I will go on the record as saying I think rumor tables that have false rumors are wasting everyone's time.
Well, so I will amend that.
Okay.
I generally agree with that statement if there's no real way for the PCs to learn that those rumors are false in a substantial, important way that isn't just a total red herring. They went off and wasted time, right?
Yeah.
Like if there's a way for them to learn that they're false and that enables them to now trust an NPC or form a relationship with someone in power, or you know what I'm saying? Like
Sure.
That's okay if that's the, because then it's not a red herring. It's just a method of making them learn about this other NPC.
Yeah.
But if it's just, let's have a false rumor just for false rumor's sake, I can give, like, now I'll exaggerate a true rumor, right? But
sure,
having a false rumor is not necessarily the best thing.
Yep. Just running down the rumor and discovering something boring at the end is not a great session.
Right.
That's really where we are.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, the sections on people at work,
guilds and occupations. Yeah.
It's just a very good section for, as it promises, presenting towns and cities. Yeah. Like we're going to get into demographics and just daily life for the non-adventuring set, and
right.
The kinds of people that you meet here on Sesame Street.
Right. But, the thing is, like, it also goes into the difference between an artisan and a craftsman. And then it has this section where it goes through, and I wish they would have formatted this a little bit differently, but it actually tells you what a potter does, what a rug maker does, what a sailmaker does, what a shipbuilder does, what a soap maker does, what a tanner does, what a tinker does. Now, some of those you're probably thinking, well, oh, gee, what does a rug maker do? Makes rugs. Okay. But it talks about, okay, that's fine, but wealthy people collect expensive rugs. They import them from great distances, right? If you have a rug maker who is, making an artistically important type of rug, that person is going to be very different from a person who's making rugs for the peasants, right? Like,
for sure.
So so it has this nice little, once again, this is very evocative of that whole section in the DMG one where it talks about, who's in, what kind of NPCs know what and who has what skill and what do these words mean. And I like those kinds of sections because it feels like it's going to be able to help you round out the town once again, because that's the point of this chapter.
Yep. 100 instant NPC agendas. Great.
Yep.
Always good to have this kind of thing. And it says agendas. It really just means super rapid traits. Like, here's one trait to bring forward, make that NPC memorable, go.
Really weird art. Page 96, the shopkeeper isn't overly impressed by the treasure an adventurer wants to sell. They both look very mad at each other.
Yeah. The cast of their eyebrows is giving me weird flashes of Dark Dungeons, the Jack Chick track.
Yeah. Oh boy. Wow, that's going way back.
I don't want to be Elfstar anymore.
So after the wonderful table of NPC agendas, they should have just called that attitudes or something. You have some laws and punishment information. Once again, the whole point of this chapter is to create a town. So, okay, they're doing that. They talk about the different trial and sentencing and how you administer justice.
Right. Okay. And they kind of undersell the fact that this is actually about stakes. This is about like how wrong can things go when you're in a town or city. Like that. Like, the reason that you need this is to show that actions have consequences.
Right.
And they have consequences that you can't shrug off or expect to be okay without just doubling down and burning down the whole town.
Right.
Not that any D&D party would ever do that.
I've never heard of such a thing. I always gravitate to the sidebar because I want to see what their quick, thought is about something. And they have this one about law across borders.
Yeah.
And it says, adventurers who have declared fealty in one kingdom can expect fair treatment in any similar land that respects the rule of law. Legal principles and obligations extend beyond borders, even when the overall authority does not. So brigands who commit crimes in one city, return to their homes in another kingdom, can expect to be arrested and prosecuted by authorities there. maybe.
That's stretching credibility a bit.
Yeah, I feel like so I stopped reading the sidebar at that point because because I
Yeah.
was like, no, not in my game.
Right, and there's also some real issues of just the idea of the border, like
Right.
as sort of the modern like surveyor's line in the sand that we have.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Mm-hmm.
not how that worked, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a miss one. Some of these sidebars are hit and miss. That's a miss for
Yep,
me.
yep. That's
That's a
what.
no from me. We're playing a D&D idol. That's a no. It's a
Right.
no.
Well, we're prying the eyes out of a D&D idol. Yes, got it.
Yes, that is true. Yes, um, and then they go into the building a city.
On rock and roll.
That's right. That's where we did build it there. Yes, yes. Then we took an airplane. And then it talks about geography and talks about all of the things you should be taking into account. How many buildings, filling in the details, etc. One really interesting part to this is they go so far as to tell you the percentage of buildings that should be of what type. So, for example, it talks about residences should be about 30% of the buildings in your town. Administrative things like town halls, militia barracks, and city centers should only be 5%. Entertainment should be 5%. Industrial, people who make things should be 10%. Nobility, their houses and villas should be 5%. 10% of the building should be shops. 15% slums. Public works 5%. Travel, like inns and shipyards and messengers and stables, should be 10%. And farms should be 5%. Like, I found this really interesting that they actually put a percentage there.
Yeah, I think
And
I
I was
really
one.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I do too. And I was wondering though. Now, okay, I'll preface this with I did not do the research to find out the answer to this question, but I was wondering if one of them actually, if whoever was doing this actually like researched, city planners and medieval city planning and stuff like that to actually get these numbers, or did they just give it a spitball? They eyeballed it and said, yeah, okay, this makes a good D&D game. 15% of the town is slums,
Well, I'm going to say that anything that rounds off to 5% so consistently is at minimum based on, it's fine.
Well, sure. I mean, but how close does it hew, right? Did they actually, I just want to know if there was any real research that went into that, right? I mean, I don't know. It's just my brain went weird on that one. So it also gives us information about how many buildings should be in the town and whether it's crowded, standard, or sparse. Like, these are actually, the reason I like this section is this is workable stuff. I could use this page. I could
Yep.
use this page in 5th edition D&D right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of this chapter is in pretty good shape to just be applied to 5e directly.
Right. Right.
Even the business about ranks, just that's rules that are new in this chapter, so who cares?
Right. Yeah. So then it has some magical events. It gives you an example of some massive magical events and several examples, actually. And then that's the end of the chapter. So unless you want to discuss anything else in there.
I mean, the Burning Eye of Algatra.
Yes.
I actually saw that trilogy of movies
You
just
mean
recently.
Sauron?
Yeah, that would be the one. That's not shy, and I don't think it should be. It's great. Anyway, these are all just great as sort of, do you want to run a D&D campaign that is a disaster porn film? That's kind of great, actually.
Yeah.
Whether you can fix it at the end or not, right?
Right.
But
Right.
the more you can focus on, this is a story about people facing real threats that they can't just stab. That's good stuff.
Yeah. And the only thing I wish this had that it doesn't seem to have is this section has a hard time explaining how you could take this 2-page event that it's describing and the trigger and how to stop it, and you can turn that into an entire campaign, and it's okay if you don't know how it's going to turn out or what happens in the middle. Like,
Sure.
it's presented as, oh, here's this magical event. Like, oh, it's one time and it's going to be one quest to resolve this. But you could turn this thing into an 8-session campaign arc.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so I feel like it doesn't do a great job of that. But other than that, that's my only nitpick about this, because some of these are really good. And the Killing Frost of Gulurok, Oral.
Yeah. I mean, that they don't have the death plague of a Sararak, maybe.
Right. Yes.
Seems a bit of a oversight.
Right. Right. Of course. Yes.
Or just the spell plague of Fourth and Forgotten Realms.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they've done a really good job
Mm-hmm.
of hanging adventures and whole settings on these kinds of major phenomena.
Mm-hmm. Phenomenon. And then, man, we're dorks. Anyway,
they've done a really good job of that, and so, like, this is sort of a really good start. And I don't expect them to successfully present a whole campaign in a page and a half or whatever. But it's interesting, sort of, how this model does get mapped forward into. Actually, we're going to publish whole campaigns on this. I guess that's what I'm really trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, and I agree with you that I don't necessarily expect them to say, here's how a whole campaign would go in a page and a half or in 2 pages. But they should have a little paragraph at the end that says, hey, this could be more than just one quest. You could turn this into a whole campaign framework. You could use this as a whole campaign framework. Here's how, and with 2 sentences of example, right? Or 2 sentences of suggestion or something. That's the only thing I think it's missing. Other than that, it's good.
Yep.
And then we get to the chapter 4, which is Saltmarsh, and literally it's just a chapter that describes the town and has a map with numbered locations.
Yeah, I know I don't have anything useful to say about this without just doing a site-by-site comparison.
Right.
To
so
Ghost of Saltmarsh.
I don't think that's necessary, but my comment was going to be, half of me loves this and half of me is like, why is this in here? Because
sure,
I understand it's a worked example. It's far, far more detail than what they get you to make in the previous chapter in the city building part. Like, this literally is just so that they could say, hey, here's this book and it has this cool adventure location that you can, make a home base for your PCs in, right? Like, but other than that, there's really no reason for it to be in this book. There really isn't. I mean, some of the named buildings come with adventure hooks and there's a couple of maps like it, but I don't know.
I think that it really has to just be seen as a buy it today, use it today kind of. You can run a campaign right here, right now, and as a application of everything they've been teaching you in the book so far.
Yeah.
The section of notable NPCs has to be the most insane presentation of its idea that could be imagined, just because it breaks down literally every inhabitant of this. How many thousands?
Right.
Was it like 5,000 person city or something like that?
And it's right at the front. I mean, it's like, let's start by telling you the roster of everybody in town.
Yeah, population 3,850.
Yeah,
and we can now tell you the character classes of every single one of them, and the alignments and names for a surprisingly large number.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah. But that's because in 3rd edition, everybody was a character class.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And a lot of these people would just be statted as commoners now. Sure. That's fine. Or knight or veteran or whatever.
Right.
It's just, it's a lot. That's all I'm really saying.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that assessment. And it's right up front. It's like, here you go. Here's your list of, you know, yeah. I'm not saying that the chapter 4 is bad,
Yeah.
right? Like the information in it's great. It has venture hooks. It has all the, has everything that you could need as a real adventure location. I'm not knocking that at all. I just think it's misplaced in the book. It's whatever, but
Okay.
Anyway,
So, folks, that's going to be it for the, let's say, probably seventh day of the 12 Days of Edition Wars.
Look, it's 2020. We can't keep track of the days.
I certainly don't know what day it is now.
Yeah.
But that's mostly the fine glass of ruby port speaking.
I didn't get one of those. Wait a minute. Where's my waiter?
That is certainly not my fault. My waiter is still on his way to you. He's social distancing.
And we will see you next time for day 8 or 9 or one of those.
Whatever.